We get it rolling. Bob Pollock from the Extension on the line with us. And our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. And you can give Bob a call at 479-1160. He's on the other line awaiting your call. Good morning.
Good morning.
Got a little bit of rain this morning, huh? This week
it's been a
little bit more moist, but still a long way to go before we get back to where we should be, right?
Yes, but every little bit helps.
Yeah, we'll take whatever.
And it lasts longer this time of year since it's a little cooler. It's not going to evaporate as quickly, so we will take it. This is one of the very few Fridays you can actually say that it's damp outside.
Yeah, it is, and that's fine. But one of the things I've noticed, we've had some really frosty mornings. The plants really don't seem to be as affected by it as in past years. There hasn't been a killer frost yet, has there?
Yeah, it's been in some spots, in those low valleys and things, there have been a couple of hard freezes so far. But you're right, it's been marginal. And there's been enough, it's been warm enough during the day, and there's still enough heat in the ground that I think it helps to alleviate some of that coldness to this point.
Yeah, and it means that the growing season is extended a little bit longer than I'm used to. Am I correct, or is that just my perception?
No, we're, usually about the second week of October is when we usually have a good hard freeze or two to knock things back. And we really haven't had that, with a few exceptions around the area in those low spots.
Could get it tonight, though.
But we could get it tonight. It looks like, this is going to clear out, and it's going to be clear and calm, and that's usually when we get hit hard. So
the record low. The record low for tonight is 28 degrees. They're saying 30 right now in our forecast.
All right, we're getting pretty close.
Is covering plants still going to work when it's that cold?
Yes, you can still cover things. So because it looks like, in the next week it's still going to be reasonably warm, and the night temperatures are going to be a little warmer. So we're going to dip down here one night and then go back up again. So if you have things that are still, flower pots and things like that, you can either bring them in or cover them where they are and get some more time out of them, especially for that. Or if you swapped into mums and things like that, they will take some cold, but still, if we get a good hard freeze, the flowers will get killed on those.
I still have a couple of volunteer tomato plants that are in blossom right next to the house, being protected, I think, from the frost right now. But they're also, unfortunately, protected from the sun, and there's just not enough on them that they're going to develop tomatoes. But I can dream, can't I?
Yes, you can. You could build a little greenhouse around them.
Yeah, I guess I could do that. It's odd because they're growing. There's a shrub in front of them and the chimney right behind them, and somehow they're still growing and blooming.
They're tough.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They're probably straggly.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, they're
trying to reach up. Are they pretty?
They're pretty hardy.
Okay.
And they do have blossoms.
Yeah, so that you would have thought at your place they would have been killed by now, but just protected enough, and so that we can really see the difference it makes when plants are near buildings, and that goes both ways. So when it's cooler, we can get some heat, and depending on the structure, whether it's brick or stone or some other surface, some of those are better at holding heat and then releasing that. So you can, especially on stone and brick, you can gain some heat from that, and of course just the heat from the house and everything gives you a buffer there. And it might only be a couple of degrees, but that can be enough when the temperature's just hovering around freezing to make the difference.
Yeah. All right, tell me if this theory is right. I'm looking at the lawn the other day. I know that I'm going to have to take several trips over that lawn with the mower still, just when the leaves are down. But for now, I'm thinking I need to to get this lawn mowed simply because when the leaves come down, the grass is going to be too high to really be effective in chopping up the leaves. It's going to be all gunky and everything. So I want to get that grass cut. The question being, at what point do you say to yourself, I want to let that grass grow so it's longer through the winter? Or do you say that? I want my grass longer through the winter months.
You really don't want it any longer than normal for the winter. What we don't want to have happen is it mat down. So when it's longer, and when we get a snow, and of course even heavy leaf drop can kind of push it over and pack it down. So we want to avoid that, because when it mats, then we can, and then if we get snow on there and it stays on there for a period of time, then you can get some molds going on there, snow mold, and that will damage that turf. Okay. So it's better to just keep it at the normal mowing height. You can mow it just one notch lower for the fall is okay, but try to keep it about where it normally is.
Okay, all right. That's a good point. It's just like having a crew cut or longer hair that's going to lay over.
Yes. And also keeping that the foliage there can still shade the ground, which can prevent some of the winter annual weeds, especially, if the turf's a little thin. We can get winter annual weeds, chickweed, and things like that that'll actually germinate during the winter months and get in there. Mm-hmm. So if we have the ground shaded, then that helps minimize the amount of seeds that might germinate.
Now, I know that people do this. One of my Amish neighbors was doing it last night as we're taking our walk past his place, gathering up all the leaves, putting them on the garden, and burning them so that you've got the leaf ashes on your garden. Tell me about that. Is that a good idea?
We'd prefer not to do that. It would be better just to coat the garden with the leaves and leave them there, mm-hmm. And let them naturally decay. You can put them on and put a coating on there and let them there, which will also help suppress any weeds that might. So if you've cleaned up the garden, you've taken all the vegetable plants and things out, or chopped them up and composted them there, trying to compost them there as well. Or if you've completely cleaned it up and even rototilled it, then putting that layer on there can really help minimize any weeds that might germinate over winter in the garden too.
Mm-hmm. But burning the leaves doesn't help them at all.
No, I mean there are nutrients that still can be preserved in that process. I think probably the biggest thing is it reduces the amount of leaves there to a little pile of ashes that can be easily spread around. Mm-hmm. So the bulk isn't there. And depending on the equipment that you have to work the soil and work all those leaves into the ground can influence that as well, because it can be a challenge by hand with a shovel to work a lot of leaves and get them mixed up into the garden soil.
If there was a way to do it, it would be really good to get those leaves all chopped up with the mower and then put the chopped up leaves on the garden.
Yes, that really moves the process along. For sure. And if you have tougher leaves, like a lot of oak leaves, can lay there all winter, and they look exactly the same as they did the day you put them on there. Mm-hmm. So leaves like that. Other leaves, a lot of the maple leaves, will decompose pretty quickly. So anything you can do to chop those into smaller pieces, like with the mower, that will aid in that decomposition process and make it much easier, especially for the garden, to work that into the soil.
Yeah, and so therefore, if it's not in the garden but it's out in the lawn that I'm chopping them up, the same theory applies.
Yes, because that's an acceptable practice because it's adding organic matter, it's recycling those nutrients that are still in the leaves, and you can get them into small enough pieces. You can overdo it. If you have a big tree and all you can see is leaves, and even when you go over it and chop them up with the mower, if you still can't see the lawn, then we're putting a little bit too much on there at one time. But if you can keep ahead of that on a regular basis and go over it, then yes, those will all chop into small pieces and work their way down to the soil and eventually be able to add some organic matter plus add some nutrients along the way that can benefit the grass and the soil.
So I use a mulch blade on my rider, and it's on all the time. That's the only blade I use, which basically means that it cuts the product twice, sends it up into the deck, and then brings it back down through and chops it again. And that would be beneficial, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
All righty.
And it saves you work too, because you're mowing, you're chopping, and then when you're done. You don't have to still rake all the leaves or collect them.
Yeah. You're
and
right
and
about
it
that.
it keeps them in place. It recycles those nutrients in place where they were created, and so when you think downstream, that's beneficial. The more we can control things on our local level, the better we are.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. Talked a little bit of leaf work here today on Indiana in the Morning. Robert, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
You also.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, 101.1 FM, AM 1160. FM, AM 1160.